And my first business was in private equity. My first year in our first business, we raised around $40 million.
Wow.
Second year, we raised another 40. I was in that business for about 4.5 years. And I looked back at my life and I was like, the one core ingredient to all of this was that I knew I was meant for more. I had a vision that was so deeply ingrained with everything I did, and I just went and I did it. So I like to say it is intuitive, but it's also action-based.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Juliet Peters, host of Her Table, Her Rules. Thanks for joining us today. I am super excited that I have Sabrina Guler with us today, and we're going to talk about a topic we've explored before, but probably not as in-depth as we're going to talk about it today, which is kind of the intersection of intuitive decision-making and business. Those two things seem to not always go together, right? But you really have spent your career really walking with those two things together. So why don't you tell everyone kind of where you started in your traditional trajectory and how you have kind of now morphed into really baking that highly intuitive sort of gift into what you're doing with a business consulting and coaching?
Yeah, what a loaded question. First of all, thanks for having me. So I like to break the original myth and say that they're always one in it of the same.
Yeah.
I just think we are taught to separate them.
Yeah.
But most business ideas and most people's callings come from some kind of an idea, some kind of a hit. And then what usually separates you from your intuition is an overload of strategy, an overload of noise, comparison, right? Fear.
Yes.
And then what happens is you try to separate them because you're like, oh, well, this person's doing that thing. So now I'm going to go separate myself from my calling and try to go do it that way, right?
Yeah.
So I have my story. So I'm born and raised in New Jersey.
Yeah.
My parents, my dad's an entrepreneur. It's so funny because as a kid, I didn't understand the risks of entrepreneurship until looking back till I was like probably 18 years old when my parents went bankrupt 2006, 2008, and which is pretty normalized in business, but I didn't know that as a kid. And I had a very intuitive calling when I was 16 that I needed to focus on creating a business, creating stability and wealth for myself, and that I would be fine, that my parents would be fine, but that it was going to be pretty rough for the foreseeable future. So shortly after that, I moved to New York City. I was 18 years old with a suitcase, $5. I lived in a Harlem house with like 8 girls.
Yeah.
And I was like, I had this vision. And when I say vision, I don't mean like a premonition.
Yeah.
I mean like I knew in my bones that I was meant for more.
Yeah.
And I didn't know how, but I knew that that would be my path, no matter how hard it got.
Yeah.
So I bartended and I was exposed to a lot. I mean, it's a city that's pretty aggressive,
yes.
Right?
Right. Absolutely.
So with my exposure to drugs and drinking and unfortunately not a lot of guidance, my parents were very stressed. I'll never forget, I was 20 years old. I went through a horrible breakup. I dated a rich guy and I went through a breakup and I was like, I never want to be in this position. I felt disconnected from my intuition. I had dropped my vision for a second because I was like, maybe somebody can take care of me.
Yeah.
And I was dropped like a cold potato. And I remember having like this reconnection with myself. And I'm like, I'm going to go back to my why. And my why is to go back to knowing that deep down I'm meant for something more. So I moved to Arizona. That's how I ended up here. And at the time, technology was really big. And I was like, I want to go work for Apple. And I was probably like 21 or 22 years old with no degree, no money, debt. I think my credit score was like 500.
Yeah.
And my parents were just kind of recouping.
Yes.
And they moved to Arizona. And I told my parents, I want to work for Apple. And my parents were like, okay, I don't know how you're going to do that, but like, good luck, right?
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, what are my gifts? Mm-hmm. I can sell things. I can learn things very quickly. And I just can believe that I can do it. So I actually reverse engineered my first job. And by the time I turned 23 with barely a degree, I actually went to Chandler Community High School.
Yeah.
I got my first job making 40 grand a year at Isogenics in Gilbert,
Yeah.
if you guys know where that is.
Yeah, I do.
And then a year later, I reverse engineered. I had a vision. I was like, I want to be a project manager. I want to work for Apple. What do I need to do to reverse engineer things? So I actually looked at their job postings and I was like, I'm just going to go and do that. And I mastered that. And so fast forward 3 years later, I got my dream job at Apple. I was making around $250,000 a year there in that job. But I knew that I wasn't meant for corporate. I knew that I would eventually start as an entrepreneur. And that belief system kicked me into my first business. My first business was probably one of the biggest tests of my intuition, because you're leaving a cushy job and you're, diving deep into the unknown. And my first business, I was like, okay, I'm very creative. I love investing. I have this vision for more. And again, I keep going back to that because it's the one ingredient, it's the one thread that kind of, it's weaved into everything I did. And my first business was in private equity. My first year in our first business, we raised around $40 million.
Wow.
Second year, we raised another 40. And I was in that business. I'm fast forwarding, right, to give you some
Yes.
highlight clips. I was in that business for about 4.5 years. And I looked back at my life and I was like, the one core ingredient to all of this was that I knew I was meant for more. I had a vision that was so deeply ingrained with everything I did. And I just went and I did it. So I like to say it is intuitive, but it's also action based.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the mistake. I don't know if it's a mistake, but there is a kind of message out there that you can just sort of manifest yourself into everything, right? But it isn't that easy, right? I mean, you have to there is work attached to the belief and the embodiment of feeling that you're meant to do something else. You could be meant to do something else all day, but if you don't put action with it, you won't. I mean, that will never happen, right? It isn't magic. And I think sometimes people think it's magic dust that you sprinkle on things or you use words and that delivers everything. No, that's not kind of how it goes. There has to be action with it, right?
Sure. Yeah. I like to say there are 3 pillars to kind of being in that attractor field of getting what you want. And it really comes down to belief.
Mm-hmm.
And there's like 3 pillars of belief. You either have some level of delusion, which I did, which works for a lot of people like Elon Musk and Sarah Blakely and people who are really creating products that just don't exist. Right. So you have to be Delulu.
Yeah.
The second thing is finding a partner or a co-founder that can help support your belief system. And the third one is experience.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just need to take action, a lot of action to gain reps to be like, actually, I believe that I'm capable of this thing. But the core center of it is belief.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point that you just made with really having a deeply ingrained and sort of like that, like a laser focus, right, on that. Because when you are in an area where there isn't anything already existing, I do think you have to have a level of delulu-ness, right? If that's a thing, delulu-ness. So, but yeah, I mean, I think that's really a very interesting way that you broke that down, because I think that is 100% really where everyone kind of needs to go. So how did you, so one of the things you talked about is the company and having a co-founder. So a lot of people, right, are fearful of co-founders because you hear all the bad stories of what it means to be a co-founder, right? And there's always infighting and there's always lawsuits and there's always, right? How do you make that kind of a business relationship work?
I've experienced it all on the spectrum. So I've had horrible partners. I've gotten into legal things with people. I've also had great partners. And I think the number one thing that I think people really overlook is they don't understand their values and how their values map up with their business. The in my opinion, and this, this can ruffle some feathers, you should not be making money if you're not in alignment with if your business is not in alignment with your values. It is a means to an end. Yeah. Always. Like, that's why people rotate out of businesses or rotate out of business partners, because you're not aligned with that. Mm-hmm. And so if one person wants to sell in 5 years, but you have this dream to like make it a personal brand and make it your thing, it's not, you're not aligned with that. It's a means for divorce, for business divorce, right? So I think the problem is people overstep that because they see the money and they're like, oh, well, this person can help me raise money, so I'm just going to give them what they want, right? Or I'm just going to overlook my values. It's a means to an end. Yeah.
Let me ask you, because while we're talking about money, because I think that it's really important to have open and honest conversations about money. And, you had this sort of driving force, and I'm sure that wanting to kind of stand on your own 2 feet, certainly based on what you saw your parents experience, is probably at a really critical time in your life, age-wise, right? You're seeing this other thing play out. How do you walk in the businesses that you're creating so that money doesn't become the only driver? So, I really see that split in the business world a lot, which is there are people that work for sort of from a higher place, right? And they know they want to create things. And then there are those who really are driven by money. No judgment about either one, but I mean, that seems to be the dichotomy when you're starting a business. So how do you kind of how do you kind of stitch those two things together so that you're driven by goals, right? Because that's really important, but without making that the only discussion.
Yeah, I think honestly, I don't think either is bad. Yeah. Like, I have literally gone into business for things purely just for revenue and also the experience. Like, my first business taught me how to raise money, how to do some really hard things operationally, like really run the backbone of a business, which is a lot of the uglier sides of business. Mm-hmm. And I needed to do that because now I have that like downloaded in me now, where now I can focus on the visionary things, right? And that's where my highest and best use case is as a founder. Mm-hmm. But I think when you decipher those two things with money in particularly, I think if you truly believe that you are going to make, that that you're capable of making $5 million a year in your business, and you don't have that like scarcity in the back of your mind, it's like weirdly like dating, right? It's like, if you're not desperate, then you're going to make the right decision in a much more calm, well thought out way. And I think the problem is because people have such generational poverty and traumas that come from their parents. I mean, I did too. They carry those beliefs into their business. And then what happens is their nervous system isn't regulated for more. So they look at people like the only solution to making more money, or having this certain type of client that they secretly hate to make more money. Yeah. Or doing business a certain way just to make more money. So I think if you want to go into business for money, do it. I mean, that it could be a great experience, but if you're going to it from like, oh, there's a lack and this is the only way, it's a means to an end.
Yeah, I think that you touched on something that is, nerve producing in people. It's like a lot of times you'll set your goals related to your revenue, and you really have a secret and inside your head, you have a set point, a low set point. And a lot of times you'll hear these stories, like lottery winners is a good example, right? They get all this money that they've always wanted their whole lives. And then they are, I forget what the statistic is, huge number are bankrupt very quickly after getting this huge money, because their nervous system, their patterning is not, it's not matured to be able to go past that. So you'll always, your revenue is going to be coming down to where your comfort level is. Yeah. So how do you push yourself through that comfort level?
I like to say, if you don't know what your set point is, so it's really good to know your set point. I actually did this past year. So I like to say, even though I had, my first business was a 9-figure business, it's amazing because once you hit certain levels of entrepreneurship and then you move to different industries, you start from ground zero again, from your place of knowledge. Like my other business was in real estate investing. I'm now in the online marketing space, essentially, right? It's such a different point of view. That business required zero vulnerability. It had no face of the business. This is all vulnerability, right? And so I think when I transitioned into this business, to make money in this is so different. And I remember looking at myself in the mirror. This is the activity. If you don't know what your baseline is, and if you think this is corny.
No, I don't think it's corny.
No,
I use the term. I mean, yeah, I think.
Not you, but like if you're listening to this and you're like, I'm not going to go in front of the mirror and start talking to myself. No, I think you should do it.
Yeah.
I think you go to the mirror, you go to your mirror and you say out loud, I believe I can make $5 million in my business or 1 million, whatever that is. And you keep climbing up. And the second you feel a doubt or like, or like there's a cringe or like, I don't know if I can do it or like, it's like, you know, when you're lying to yourself. And the second you know when you're lying to yourself, that is your set point.
Yeah.
So when you see like on Instagram, there's so many people like doing coaching and all these online offers.
Yeah.
And people are like, I'm doing the carousels and all the BS and I'm still not making money. I guarantee you're just putting stuff out to hope that it works, but you don't actually believe it. And the problem is when you don't actually believe it, your nervous system isn't regulated. So you're carrying that doubt everywhere you go. Your clients feel it. The audience feels it. The people, like everybody feels it. And you're the only one that isn't clocking that you don't believe your own capability. So I like to say, write it down, say it out loud. Yeah. And then how to change that is to get very comfortable in that place. Yeah. Go meet people who are making that. Yeah. What do they believe about themselves? I guarantee you there's a huge difference.
Yeah. One of the coaches that I've worked with in the past has a really great exercise around what is your low bar set point, and then what is where can you move it to within a comfort level and make that move first. So like incrementally, right? But I love this idea of really kind of figuring out big picture where you're at. And I think we have talked about this before on this podcast. And I think it's really important specifically for women because we have a lot of stories around money and we have a lot of discomfort in talking about money. And we have, a lot of beliefs that we have to crack through, because if we don't do that, we're really not going to be able to build businesses to the level that we can build them to, because we're going to be holding ourselves back. We'll fall back to that low bar set point instead of kind of moving your set point forward. So not only getting to the right set point, but getting to what is the story you're telling. Why is that your set? Like, why is that? Why do you go, ugh, when you hear $3 million? What's that about, right? And kind of digging into what's the work that you have to do around that to bust through that.
That core belief,
and we all have them and they're long held, formed, and probably, generationally, right? So we have to get to kind of what the root of that is, because we have big things to do in the world and we need to be able to do them from a place of really wealth, right?
Yeah. I also find that it's interesting because when I was 20, I used to bartend and I was exposed to a lot of like millionaires and billionaires who lived in New York. So that was the gap between like what my parents were going through and what I was in. So I was exposed to a lot of money. And I realized I was like, how is it that I live within an 8-mile vicinity and I can sit next to this person who has a $40 million penthouse and we are in the same reality, but I just have such a different experience. Yeah. And so my core belief was so open to making money as a kid. But I will say, when you have experiences like bad co-founders, or you make a really bad decision in business, you spend money on stupid things. I've done it. I've made those mistakes. Yeah. Those beliefs start to change because your failures, if they're not looked at from the perspective of this is making me a better entrepreneur and I'm not going to quit. If you don't really reshape those, your beliefs can change over time. Yeah. And then what happens is people end up, later on in life and they're like, where did my belief system go? Where did my connection to my intuition go? Like what happened? And that applies to like bad marriages, right? I work with so many women who are like, I just got divorced and I don't know what I believe in about money. Yeah. And it's like, well, somewhere along the lines, that's something changed.
Well, let's talk about that for a second. We'll flip into the whole idea of energetics and intuition. Let's talk about these these cute little cards. So, you know, this isn't going to be for everyone, but it doesn't matter. We are talking to the people who are open to sort of exploring. So a lot of people use Oracle, Tarot. I mean, there's as an internal intuitive vehicle. So they look at these cards, right? And then they are doing meditation or work around what is the feeling they're getting. Why did you do that? I mean, I love that you took what we'll call woo-woo. You took something that's super woo-woo, right? And you grounded it, right? Because this is all about finances and money.
Yeah. So I'll share. So, so this is an Oracle card deck.
Yeah.
And for those of you who don't know what Oracle cards are, they're basically, or an Oracle card deck is created by an artist. So it's a card deck like playing cards.
Yep.
There are 53 of them. They come with a little book, and each card represents a message or a theme or something that you can reflect on.
Yep.
So I illustrated all the cards and I built the deck because, I mean, let's face it, we can talk about intuition all day long, but how do you apply intuition when you're afraid, you're going through something, the whole world is against you, you're losing money? Like, these are real problems that everybody faces when they're going through entrepreneurship. And there are times where I lost my own connection to myself, and I still do sometimes. We're human. So I created these because, these are a little different than normal Oracle cards, because what I wanted to do is I almost wanted to take the taboo-ness out of them and make it applicable. So every time you have a question or a fear or a doubt in business, you shuffle the deck. It should be fun. It shouldn't be scary. You pull a card out, and it actually has journal prompts for you to reflect on. It's not like a spirit or it's just for you to gain insight on what something can show or bring self-awareness to in a situation where you might not want to talk about it. Yeah. I mean, who wants to talk about losing money and clients and all that? There's a lot of shame in business.
Right.
So you either have coaches and consultants. Some people don't want to do that.
Yeah.
Or you have a product that actually helps you build that muscle, because it is a muscle.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a muscle.
Yeah. Exactly. Well, I could sit here and talk to you about this all day. I find it really fascinating, and I'm so grateful that that you have been able to join us today and to kind of talk through, what I think that people live with a lot but don't talk about as much, which is how do you use the guidance that you have within yourself to help shape your business decisions. It's a really interesting area of, conversation, and you're obviously making a business at it.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. I think if there's one thing that I'll say about intuition, that intuition is the core of so many hot topics right now. A lot of people are talking about like authenticity and, show up on your TikTok or your Instagram and like share your story and be vulnerable. I think that is just another way to describe how to show up more you and how to apply more of your gifts, more of your strengths into your business, rather than it just being like this floaty thing that you can use whenever. And so if you're someone who's building your business and you want to apply more of you into it, I recommend getting into oracles or understanding your belief systems and what you believe is true about who you are and what you're building, and it'll give you a lot. It'll share a lot with maybe some of the things that you're contemplating.
Yeah, I think that's a good point to talk about. Which is that really, if you want to bring your whole self to your business, you need to know who your whole self is, right? And you need to know where within yourself you're at risk for making poor decisions or not. Again, it's a type of self-reflection that I think it's really hard to create a really strong business if you don't know yourself, right? Because business will knock the wind out of you on a day-to-day basis, right?
Especially the higher you go, too.
Right. And you have to have a true north, and you have to know what the true north is. And you are here to bring your full self to whatever it is you're doing. And so I appreciate topics like this where we kind of demystify the idea that you have to show up. I mean, where I came from, right? When I first entered the business world, I mean, we were dressed a certain way. We had, wore nylons every day. God, I can't even believe that we wore those torture implements every single day, right? And you had to wear and look a certain way, and any kind of anything that put you outside of the realm of that made you kind of a target for not conforming to whatever it was the standard was for how to show up every day in business. Think of all the time and energy and really good stuff we've wasted doing that.
I'm a target every day. I'm a target right now.
Yeah. Right?
Yep.
I know. That's exactly right. So, I think it's really awesome that you're doing that. Tell everyone how they can reach out to you and where they can find you.
If you are looking to join a community of other people who are tapping into their intuition, or you want to learn how to use that into your business, you can go to intuitiveceo.com, and all of my resources are there.
Awesome. Thank you so much,
Thank
Sabrina,
you.
for joining us today. Really, really appreciate it. Thank you, everyone. And we'll see you next time on Her Table, Her Rules.